Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Heroic Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2003 action comedy movie titled The Rundown. Now, The Rundown also goes by several other names, including Hell Dorado, Welcome to the Jungle, and I think there was some other names too. The untitled Dwayne The Rock Johnson Project. Okay, maybe I'm kidding on that last one. But anyhow, this movie was directed by Peter Berg. It was produced by Mark Abraham, Bill Corliss, Karen Glasser, and Kevin Meisher. The script was done by R.J. Stewart and James Vanderbilt. The score was done by Harry Gregson Williams. The cinematography by Tobias Schleicher. And the editing was done by Richard Pearson. And the stars of this movie are Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Seann William Scott, yes, that's right, the guy who played Stifler in the American Pie movies. Let's see, we had Rosario Dawson, the screen legend Christopher Walken, William Lucking, Ewan Bremner, Ernie Reyes Jr., Jon Gries, and guess what? A cameo appearance from action film legend Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's in this one little scene in a cheeky cameo performance in during the bar scene. You know, where The Rock was taking on a slew full of football players. And the production company was WWE Films. And for those who didn't know, Vince McMahon himself served as an executive producer for this project. So this is what I thought about this movie. Okay, in the year 2000, charismatic WWE superstar Dwayne The Rock Johnson made his acting debut in The Mummy Returns. The viewers thought, oh great, here we go again, another wrestling superstar making a fool of himself by starring in another convoluted action film. We've seen too many humiliating movies from Hulk Hogan. We've seen some mediocre fare from Rowdy Piper. Nothing personal, God rest his soul to the hot rod. We've seen Triple H being in movies. We've seen Captain Lou Albano in movies. We've seen Kevin Nash in movies. And so here we go again. Another wrestler wannabe wants to make it outside the core of professional wrestling, thinking that his head is too big to be a wrestling superstar or doesn't want to be a one-dimensional performer, so he decides to make a fool of himself by entering the movie industry. That was the first impression that many people got. We all hoped he would just simply put on the trunks and just grapple with the likes of Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, and maybe headline another pay-per-view. But you got to admire his resiliency. He didn't let the critics get the best of him, no siree. He took himself in other avenues in the entertainment community where his talents were actually appreciated. He was a guest on the long-running sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live, where he executed quite nicely as a comedic performance, and he did well as to satirize himself to near perfection. I mean, he played multitude of characters on Saturday Night Live, and he was convincingly funny. So then he decided to give himself another chance. So in 2002, he returned to the big screen for another tryout. He reprised his role in The Mummy Returns with the spin-off movie The Scorpion King. And though not entirely The Rock's fault, the script and the movie as a whole was a flop, and once again, he was the center of ridicule as another no-talent wrestler actor wannabe. But once again, he had another guest appearance on Saturday Night Live and proved contrary if given the right scripting for him to work on. If he's given the right material to work with, this guy can act in act circles around maybe some of the top stars in the movie industry. I mean, I'm not gonna say even as we speak, as we speak, I still don't think he's the greatest actor that ever lived. No, not even close. But if you give him the right material to work with, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson actually has great acting chops. So in 2003, we have The Rock, who stars in The Rundown, which combines adventure mixed in with spectacular comedic elements to it. In many ways, it feels like a satirical take on Indiana Jones films of the 80s set in the Amazon jungles of Brazil. Yes, it did have a kind of a bit of a mix between Indiana Jones meets Midnight Run. And much to my surprise, The Rock seems to be somewhat closer at home here, as he juxtaposes his knack for comedic smarminess and the ability to execute us with the action scenes splendidly. The action in this movie is right up there with Indiana Jones. Lots of bad guys to kick around, lots of trials and tribulations, lots of near death scenarios, lots of escaping from one dangerous situation to another without getting a scratch. Sure, there is a lack of logical sense. I mean, throughout the whole movie, he should have at least gotten a scratch or a nick or whatnot, or a broken bone of something. But throughout this whole action scenes, he was put into many, many dangerous situations, and not once did we ever see him leave with a scratch or even a little tiny blister. So yes, it is surreal, but it's still a fun, exciting movie to watch. And I think The Rock does indeed have a home in the Hollywood community. And as Arnold Schwarzenegger says in his little cameo, all you have to do is have fun. So the rundown turned this wannabe actor into the real deal. So Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stars as Beck, a bounty hunter who kind of wants to give up his job as a bounty hunter and has more and has more of a domestic endeavor in mind. And his endeavor really is he has aspirations to become a chef. Yes, he wants to turn away from bounty hunter business. He wants to take his life out of danger and to open up his own restaurant. And he asks his boss, who runs some kind of organized criminal activity, to release him from his job as a bounty hunter. He wants his resignation. He wants his severance pay. But his boss, Billy Walker, played by William Lucking, says that he'll only do it if he does one last assignment. And that assignment is to go into the Amazon jungle and to take out his son Travis, played by Seann William Scott, who, as I mentioned before, up till now, his most famous role was the character Stifler in the American Pie franchise. So if he could fulfill his one job to take out his son Travis, who is located in El Dorado, Brazil, in the Amazons. Then he will get his emancipation and his severance pay. So The Rock decides that to go for it. So then he goes on a rather dilapidated, broken down mini jet flown by a guy named Declan, played by Ewan Bremner, who I'm not actually quite sure what his accent is supposed to be. According to IMDb, Ewan Bremner is from Scotland, and he appears to be the stereotypical Scotsman. And there, of course, is a scene where he's dressed in Scotsman cliche with the kilt and the bagpipes. But the problem is that he is not speaking with a Scottish accent. No, instead he seems like he's speaking more closer with an Irish accent. And as of right now, I'm done with the Irish accent, but that's the way how Ewan Bremner's character seems to speak. Although he's supposed to play a Scotsman, his voice sounds more closer to Irish than Scottish. So he goes on the plane, goes into Brazil, a place called El Dorado, or as the sign says, Hell Dorado. And in this Amazonian jungle, there's a platoon filled with a mining community is located there, and this mining community is led by an evil dictator who goes by the name of Hatcher, played by Christopher Walken, who kind of like works his employees almost to the point of slavery. And of course, their mission is to look for priceless, rare artifacts that could be worth millions. And that's where they find Travis. Now Travis doesn't want to leave the Amazon, because he is out on a mission to look for a rare artifact that could be worth tons of money. And that rare artifact is called the El Gato del Diablo. Or if you can understand what that means, the devil's cat. So The Rock is trying to get this stubborn son to go with him, to go back to LA. And I thought that Seann William Scott really nailed the role quite splendidly. I mean, I'm glad that he kind of took himself out of the whole Stifler from American Pie role franchise to play. He still has the comedic chops, but he's not kind of playing off the horny pervert from the American Pie movies. He's kind of playing a much more restrained character. Sure, he's still kind of stubborn and whiny, like the average typical 20-something, but he still manages to have some good, clever jabs between him and The Rock. They have a bit of a mutual, it was an on-again, off-again camaraderie, maybe even somewhat of a frenemy of some sort. But at least, he's kind of stepping out of typecast here. And I think he actually pulls it off quite well. So the head, like I mentioned about the head honcho in this mining community, his name is Hatcher. He's played by Christopher Walken. and he has successfully gained access to his workers' lives by charging them a bundle in cost of living expenses as well as blackmailing them every chance he gets, and is not afraid to utilize strong arm tactics. Now, Travis really can't escape where he is, but he really also has no intentions for that matter. So, what appeared to look like could have been a simple, easy initiative to get his son out of the Amazon and bring him back home to Los Angeles turns out to be a lot more complex than even Beck could have imagined. Travis, of course, believes that there's a treasure nearby with loot that's gregariously sufficient in profit. Hatcher wants his end of the deal too, which is why he refrains from shooting Beck and Travis when Beck tries to lure him away through trial and error. Everyone wants that, but aside from Travis and aside from Hatcher, who wants this ancient relic, there's also a group of Kontiki rebels who are also somewhat against Hatcher. And one of the Kontiki rebels is led by a bartender waitress named Mariana, played by Rosario Dawson, who also wants the ancient relic because this ancient relic, the El Gato del Diablo, will be further used to gain them their emancipation and their freedom. So there's a lot of people who are after this gold cat statue. So this leads to a high octane chase as Beck tries to lure Travis out of the Amazonian jungles, with Hatcher's troops not far behind them. And to make things more complex than we have thought, of course, like I said, there are a few people who oppose Hatcher and his intentions. Beck and Travis are also befriended by a local villager who serves as a waitress. Her name is Mariana, played by Rosario Dawson. And her intentions of obtaining the treasure, this is a means to free her villagers from Hatcher's clutches and to get them out of the Amazonian jungles. So there's a lot at stake here. And there's also a battle of of whether you're doing right for yourself or doing right for others. Of course, granted as it may, as the chases go on and as the plot lines become all too familiar, yes, I do admit that the outcome is kind of predictable. You know, the bad guy loses. The heroes decide to, instead of just running out of Brazil with the cat statue so that they could go off and make a profit, they decide to do what is the best thing, and that is to give the cat statue to Mariana and the rest of the villagers. I guess we kind of needed a bit of some human rights diatribe implanted in this action flick. But you know what? I couldn't care in the least. The film was definitely directed by Peter Berg and with a script by R.J. Stewart and James Vanderbilt. This is an extremely entertaining and high energetic film. The verbal jabs between The Rock and Seann William Scott are humorous and clever, and the fight scenes just exhibit just how tough The Rock is as he fends off against his adversaries with ease. It's high in adrenaline that will approve to action movie aficionados. There is a little bit of an original twist here. Now, I know a lot of these action films often deal with arms and guns, machinery, and shit like that. But you know what? The Rock actually has a bit of an original take on this. You see, The Rock practically would rather fight with his sheer brutality, his sheer toughness, without bearing weaponry. In fact, he says that he's afraid to use guns. Yes, he is an action hero who doesn't really depend on guns or ammunition to beat his enemies. And that he'll only use it when necessarily needed. And he actually hates to bear arms. And that he'll only use it when he has to. And there is a reason why he doesn't use guns. And it's because he's afraid of them. Not afraid to use them, but afraid what would happen if he does use them. So that actually is pretty original. For an action film, that's kind of like the icing on the cake. And what could be said about screen acting veteran Christopher Walken? Hey, the man doesn't, this guy is a trooper. This man, he doesn't care what film he's in, whether it's good or bad. Heck, this guy will even perform in a movie for free if he wanted to, as long as there's some eccentricity implanted into his deadpan delivery. Remember that scene where he was giving out some kind of a speech or some kind of something about some kind of monologue about the tooth fairy? That was pretty rich. And it was actually quite clever. Hey, for a mindless action flick, he had some of the more clever lines. And there was actually some clever lines in this. And this movie isn't, 100% stupid. There is some insightful moments in this movie. But if you're going to go to an action film, you're not here to be enlightened with intellect. No. You want to see some kick butt action, right? But, it's always a nice treat to, have a little bit of some intellect. Just so that the filmmakers don't think we're all a bunch of complete idiots. His resume during this period sees him starring in very forgettable movies that is definitely inferior to his impressive career of films that he starred in. But The Rundown, sure, it may not be an Oscar caliber film like The Deer Hunter, which was a movie where he actually did nab an Oscar win. But it's still a great film, and Walken actually plays a very prominent role. And if Walken can generate more screen time, then the more entertained I am. His delivery of lines is very poetic, like as if he knew the script before reading, or maybe he is just a naturally eccentric individual. But what's refreshing here is that our protagonist simply refuses to bear any arms due to a horrific experience with them. Besides knowing his size and strength, why does he need weaponry? The guy is built like a tank. He's 6'4" tall. He's 265 pounds. In the wrestling ring, The Rock, he's a pretty big guy. I mean, if you've ever watched WWE wrestling, he's a big guy, but he's not like some slow-moving big muscle head. He actually has pretty decent ring technical skills too, that he had learned from Bret the Hitman Hart. I mean, why is it that sometimes you see him, aside from doing his patent moves like the Samoan drop, the spine buster, almost very similar to that, like Arn Anderson's. He also does, of course, his trademark moves, which are the People's Elbow and the Rock Bottom. I also seen him do moves like the Sharpshooter. I mean, the guy is a huge man, but he also has some pretty decent technical skills. He's a brawler, but also has some technical skills that are really good. I mean, he is like a total package. He's not a one-dimensional guy like Bill Goldberg, Hulk Hogan, or Triple H. He is very diverse if you ever see him wrestle. But once this movie becomes gun dependent, the timing is well planned. Too many movies feature gratuitous gunfights, and it becomes monotonous and mundane. But the gunfights are minimal, and only when needed makes this movie all the more original. So the movie is one that truly unsuspecting pleasant surprise. And so for those who love action, clever dialogue, and plenty of Walken, this movie is highly recommended for one to enjoy. And if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would give the rundown, my rundown would be, I would give the rundown a 9. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. Just remember, be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another review. So until next time, this is Eric Correct Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.